17. The highest levels now in use in France. Level 4. Secret Master. 14th degree. Famous Freemason. 18th degree. Cavalry of the Cross. 30th level Armored Cavalry. 31st level Supreme Supervisor of Inspectors. 32nd level Famous Prince of the Secret Kingdom. Tier 33 General Grand Overseer pp. 55-56. 18. The Bersadel Cavalry Holy Cavalry level is meant to avenge the two shrines against Philip the Beautiful and Pope Miganet V, who are the epitome of the kingdom and freedom of thought. Level 31 is the judicial level. Level 32 means Crusada's campaign to liberate Jerusalem and rebuild the Temple of Solomon. Level 33 means humbling oneself before the Great Construction p. 60. Degrees 19 through 30 are philosophical levels and comprise what is called Black Freemasonry. Philosophers René Guénon and Pierre Mariel made it to the omitted 26th level, which is the level of the Grateful Prince. Moving from degree 25 to degree 26 is symbolic and clever p. 60. 19. The priests held at the Entebbe airfield, whose captors had been overpowered by an army of Israeli soldiers, included among them the world leaders of Freemasonry, who had just returned from the great meeting held that year in Jerusalem page 62. 20. The periodical has an entire chapter, chapter 8, from p. 63 to p. 68, which contains what might be called specialist Freemasonry clubs, which are usually made up of Freemasons who gather for certain purposes specific to them. Among these was the propagation of Freemasonry among the forest dwellers. Among these are love clubs, where members of Freemasonry, male and female, go on a retreat to one of the unpopulated islands. Among these are the German dog clubs, where the members of the club help each other like dogs. Then they put a piece of cloth on the tail of a small dog, then they kiss. Among these are clubs for the purpose of recovering the secrets of Greek religious beliefs, and so on. 21. Among the societies mentioned above is one called the Eastern Star, founded in New York by Dr. Maurice in 1855, which now has 3 million members and 15 assemblies. The Crusada flower societies have moved out of the United States and are symbolized by a morgue. It is very likely that among its members are the roots of Albert the Great, the teacher of Thomas Aquinas, thus mentioned in Larousse. The light organizations that oppose Christianity and the Pope are made up of people like this. The Jews interpreted their book with Sufi interpretations. Among them is the German philosopher, Leibniz, then the mine workers. They have the form of the people of light spread in Germany and the Scandinavian countries. In the United States itself, there are still associations of this Freemasonry, having Arabic names and observing Islamic codes. Among the light groups of Freemasonry, there are also organizations for young men between and 21 years of age, adhering to the teachings of the Cavalry Temple. Among the Freemasons was Roger de Lasset, who composed a song, which later became the anthem of France, Marseillaise. Mirabeau had been a member of the Club of Light. There is a manuscript in his own handwriting to restore Freemasonry to the right path. 22. Among the assemblies of Freemasonry in France is the Human Rights Assembly p. 69. Among their organs is humanism. 23. There is a very sharp rivalry between English Freemasonry and French Freemasonry. p. 70. There were also very sharp rivalries among the French themselves, such as between the Great Eastern Assembly and the Great Assembly p. 71. 24. The contacts between Russian Freemasonry were conducted through the medium of an American named Thomas Chicken Sorensen, who was resident first in Beirut and then in Cairo between 1952 and 1959. This man was different from his namesake, who became director of the CIA, which, according to Emelianov, also belonged to Freemasonry p. 72. This Emelianov was Valery Emeliner, professor of history at State University in Moscow, professor at the Faculty of Eastern Affairs, and professor of Arabic at the Morris Torres Faculty. p. 72. 25. Emelianov says that the Jews and Freemasonry have a pyramid-like organization, at the top of which stands the B'nai B'rith organization, and that it always increases in height from the 33rd to the 99th level, and that all these are secret levels. p. 72. Emelianov offered this explanation in a 28-page report that he submitted to the International Witness of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union on January 10, 1977. These statements reveal the cover of the International Jewish Organization's p. 73. 26. George Demetron, one of the communist leaders, stated that the sessions of Freemasonry were a den of spies and a center of treason. p. 72. From the foregoing it is clear that the Freemasons and the Jews constitute one treasonous association. This was written by Pravda specifically for communist youth. This was Hitler's propaganda line. This is also the misery suffered by most of the Islamic countries due to international Freemasonry. 27. Freemasonry exists in Israel itself and is trying to expand, but the religious authorities there regard it with disfavor. The influence of Israeli Freemasonry on the politics of the country is practically negligible. The Turkish Grand Council, on the other hand, has a more frequent and stronger connection. 28. French Freemasonry has two publications, one called Humanism under Maurice Panetier, published by the Greater Eastern Council. The executive secretary of the organization deals with foreign affairs. The second publication was Points de Vue Initiatiques. Its director, Charles Henry Chevalier. It was published by the General Assembly. It contains only Freemasonry matters, and they also have a specialized printing press. p. 73. 29. In the history of Freemasonry publications from the beginning of the Great Eastern State, it continued from 1777 to 1788 État du Grand Orient. During the Second Empire Restoration, the Freemasonry library Hermes Bibliothèques Maconiques appeared, in which the words Freemasonry were inscribed, but which later fell under the control of the council. In 1829, the Freemasonry Bible Maconique appeared. It was then tried by one of the courts of Freemasonry. The court ruled against continuing the issue. Then several magazines appeared, the most famous of which were the Globe, La Globe, and the World of Freemasonry, Le Monde Maconique. The Nature of Freemasonry, L'Univers Maconique. Then, between the two world wars, Acacia was published, whose editor-in-chief was Henry Matthew. He also had an appendix dealing with Freemasonry under the title Sous le Triangle, and this magazine was very widely distributed. It was later replaced by the Union series led by Glotton. He made and sold the Stars of Freemasonry. During the occupation, its activities declined somewhat. In 1912, Le Symbolisme, founded by Oswald With, was born, which expressed the views of Freemasonry. It had a great influence on Freemasonry. It included Albert Lantewine, André Leby, Marius Lepage, Aramand Betterid, René Guénon, and Gustave Mesureur. In 1946, Le Symbolisme was led by Jonas Kornilopu. In 1956, it was led by Marius L. Lepage. Since 1968, there have been a number of publications with different behaviors and mentalities. Jean Baylet, André Bouton, Robert Amadon, and Jean Morges participated in these numbers. 30. Among the Freemasons there are poets and writers. They have written many books. They also have collections of poetry, and they have publishers. pp. 73-75. 31. Antonio Godin, one of the directors of the General Assembly in France, in 1920, participated in the Tours Conference, where the French Communist Party came out. George Marquand, another director, was from the Society for the Rights of Man. Gustave Mesureur was the third director. His deputy was from the left. p. 77. 32. In the Greater East Assembly, those elected were usually mostly socialists, but people who are not socialists are also elected. The last socialist elected director of the assembly was Fred Zalter, Troitsky's secretary. He was succeeded by Jean Better Bruto, Secretary of State under Raymond Baer. Then Serge Biha, then Michel Bronin, who was a personal friend of Jeek Chirac p. 78. 33. The aforementioned Fred Eller was an enemy of Stalinism. It was mentioned in Mugalokatin in 1976, with the party that Jake Mitruk won the position of Grand Master of the Greater East. This was the victory of Soviet sovereignty p. 78. 34. The President of the French Republic, after the victory of the Grand Master, or the Director General, with his position throughout the world, held for him a reception party. General D. Timel had returned to this tradition in 1976. It is only specific to the Greater Eastern Assembly and to the Greater Assembly, and in the time of General D. Timel. The Director General of the Assembly was one of the lower officers. He had received Georges Pompidou and the President of Freemasonry. He was a doctor. He was the doctor who had treated her. Similarly, Giscard d'Estaing had received the President of Freemasonry in his time p. 79.